My dad called me a mistake, threw me against a fridge, and disowned me on my 19th birthday. I left that night with nothing but $200 and a plan for revenge. I'd been eagerly down to my 19th birthday for 4 years, which happened on a Saturday in late September. Not because I wanted to vote or purchase scratch-offs, which are things that typical kids look forward to. I was counting since that was my expiry date under their supervision. The day they couldn't legally force me to return home if I chose to flee. I, a 23-year-old boy, grew up in one of those residences that photographs brilliantly. Two-story craftsman with white trim and shrubs that my father obsesses over every weekend. From the curb, we appeared to have everything together. Inside, however, it seemed as if I were the only thing they wanted to hide. My brother Jake is 3 years younger, and he's been my favorite since the moment he breathed his first breath. Not exaggerating. The youngster could destroy the garage, and they'd inquire whether he needed treatment. He also got a new Xbox to help him cope with his emotions. Meanwhile, I left a wet towel on the bathroom floor once and had a 50-minute lecture about respect and responsibility, which finished with my father asking if I had been reared by wolves. Growing up, I learned to exist silently, with light footsteps, no complaints, and always one step ahead of what they need so they didn't have to ask. My father would give me this look as if I angered him simply by being present. My mom was even worse because she'd smile while saying things like, "Jake's just naturally talented, sweetie. You have to work twice as hard to keep up. Jake got the genetics, the personality, the breaks." After my mom lost 3 pregnancies before him, he became their miracle baby, their second chance, and I was just the kid they had before they figured out what they really wanted. I tried, nevertheless. I received good grades and worked part-time at a local hardware shop, loading bags of mulch and concrete mix after school. Never caused any difficulties. I saved every penny since I knew they wouldn't be able to afford education. When my father spoke about my future, he would grumble something like, "You'll figure it out." Jake was 16 years old when he received a brand new gaming laptop for school. He primarily used it to watch videos and play games till 3 a.m., when I wanted to borrow it for college study. My mother told me to ask Jake first. He instructed me to obtain my own. This concludes the conversation. So when my 19th birthday arrived, I didn't have high expectations. Perhaps a card with $20 inside. Maybe a sheet cake from the supermarket. Something that recognized my existence. I awoke about 10:30 a.m. and rushed downstairs to see my father wrapping a silver ribbon around this sleek black box on the kitchen counter. Jake bounced around as if it was Christmas morning. My mother had a false camera-ready smile pasted across her face. No one glanced at me once. My mother eventually spotted me standing there and said, "Oh, perfect timing, honey. Jake, go ahead." I simply stood there, perplexed and transfixed. Jake ripped up the package and took out an exquisite stainless steel watch with a leather strap. The type that consumes more than 3 months of my hardware shop earnings. The kind that appears in magazine advertisements for perfumes and luxury vehicles. "Hey, this is sick." Jake grinned as he slipped it onto his wrist and turned it to catch the light. "Now I won't have to keep stealing yours, Dad." My father chuckled and ruffled his hair. "You've earned it, champion. We are proud of you. We earned it." The kid's proudest achievement that month was making JV basketball and avoiding suspension for vaping in the locker room. I waited there expecting for someone to remember, to look at me, to speak the 2 words that were most important today. My mother noticed something in my expression and said, "Don't look so bitter, Ethan. Life isn't about material things. When you're older, you'll understand that character matters more than gifts." I felt as if I had been punched. She spoke in that silky, condescending tone she employs when she wants to appear intelligent. As if I were a spoilt brat throwing a fit over a toy. "Thought we were having cake," I remarked gently. "Oh, we had some earlier," Jake answered nonchalantly, without glancing up from his new wristwatch. "While you were sleeping in?" I blinked. "You had cake without me." "It was just a small thing," my mother answered hurriedly. Jake grinned. "Nothing big. Don't make a scene." My name was on it. "You missed it, bro. I mean, it was sort of a joint celebration, but it's not your birthday. Get over it." My father was furious. "It's just a cake, Ethan. Stop being dramatic." Something in my mind snapped like a wire. I stared at Jake, truly looked at him, standing there with his $175 watch and wearing the sweatshirt I'd bought with my own money, which he'd taken 4 months earlier and never returned. "You know what?" I said, speaking louder than intended. This is pathetic and you are pathetic. You've never earned anything in your life. You simply coast while they give you everything and pretend you're exceptional. Jake's cheeks flushed scarlet. What's your problem, man? My problem? I joked, and it came out incorrectly. My problem is I'm standing here on my birthday watching you get a watch for existing while they can't even remember what day it is. Ethan, my mother cautioned. That's enough. No, it's not enough. It's never been enough. You treat me like I'm some stray dog you're stuck feeding while you throw parties for the golden boy who's failed every class except gym. That was the moment my father reacted quickly. He grabbed my shirt and threw me hard against the refrigerator. My head crashed into the stainless steel. Everything became white for a split second. You're done, he stated quietly and coldly. You hear me? Done. I shoved him back so hard that he staggered. His eyes widened with disbelief. I'd never pushed back before. I never raised my voice. Never fought. Touch me again, I said gently. I will make you regret it. He rushed at me again, this time with his fist, and hit me in the ribs. Once or twice. I doubled over and gasped for oxygen. My mother yelled. Jake just stood there, watching. My father grabbed my face, forcing me to stare at him. Enough, he said. We're done celebrating a failure like you. You are just a mistake. Get out of my sight. Mistake. That was who I was, not his son. I stood up, ribs screaming, felt blood in my mouth and stared at all three of them, my mother sobbing phony tears. Jake is still holding his watch. My father was breathing heavily, his hands clenched. And then I realized something. They were not going to adore me. No matter what I did, how hard I tried, or how little I made myself, I'd never be Jake. So I made a choice. I headed upstairs, got my backpack, which included a hoodie, some socks, granola bars, my phone charger, and the $200 I had been saving in an envelope taped beneath my desk drawer. I had my ID, debit card, and a Greyhound bus schedule that I had downloaded on my phone 4 weeks earlier, just in case. At 2:30 a.m., while everyone was sleeping, I sneaked out the back door. I did not have a plan. I knew I'd rather sleep on the street than stay another night in that place. The first 4 nights were awful. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. I alternated between the 24-hour restaurant on Route 12, a corner of the public library until they booted me out at closing, and a seat behind the YMCA that no one checked after midnight. I discovered which vending machines were most likely to double drop if you hit them correctly, which gas station restrooms had the greatest soap for cleaning up, and which bus lines ran all night so I could sleep without being hassled by police. On the 4th day, I was almost spotted. I was strolling past the strip mall to charge my phone at the library when I noticed my father's vehicle pulling into the parking lot as if it owned the area. The bumper has the same dings as the vanity plate frame. My thinking became ice cold. I hid behind a vending machine near the laundry door and stood there, pretending to scroll. Like I belonged. I saw him get out, glance around, and then walk into the grocery shop like he was on a mission. He did not see me. But I learned something right there. Disappearing does not mean just departing. It's keeping away when you're 5 seconds from being apprehended. By night 5, my phone had mostly died. My hoodie smelled like sweat and rain, and I had eaten so many protein bars at the petrol station that I felt my stomach might rebel. That's when I discovered the church downtown. They conducted a shelter program from the basement. Nothing spectacular, just CS and 3 hot meals every week. The person at intake was an older man with gray hair and kind eyes that you don't see very frequently. He didn't ask any questions when I arrived with my backpack and a damaged lip, just nodded and sent me to an empty cot toward the rear. I remained there for 11 days. I met some folks. I learned how to stretch $3 into 2 dinners. How to recognize trouble before it finds you. How to sleep light so nobody steals your belongings. During the day I would stroll to the library and use the public computers to fill out job applications. I applied everywhere. Restaurants, retail businesses, warehouses, delivery services, anything that would hire someone with a high school certificate and a pulse. After about a week and a half, my phone began to buzz with callbacks. That's also when my father started phoning. The first message was angry and menacing, followed by confusion and desperation. By the 4th voicemail, he was in tears. Your room's still here, Ethan. Please just come home. We can talk about this. I hadn't returned the call. What was I expected to say? That I'd rather sleep on a cot in a church basement than live in a home where I was mistaken. I ultimately got a job at a medical supplies distribution facility. This enormous hub along Highway 47 sent hospital equipment and pharmaceutical supplies to clinics in 3 states. The compensation was minimum wage plus occasional overtime, but they hired me on the spot when I arrived for the interview dressed in a borrowed button-down. The operations manager, a guy with forearms like steel cables, looked at me and said, "You show up on time. You work hard. You don't steal. We're good." That's the whole deal. I arrived early every day. After 2 weeks of sleeping at the shelter, I encountered the older guy from Intake Outdoors after one of the food services. He was delivering donated blankets and bottled soup. A former electrician retired early when his wife died. He stated that he had a converted shed outside his house that he had been using for storage, but he was thinking of renting it out cheaply to someone who needed a break. I inquired as to how inexpensive. He said $130 per week, including utilities. I moved in the next morning. It was not much. A twin mattress on a metal frame, a space heater that only worked when you breathed correctly, a microwave, and a hot plate. It smelled like engine oil and old newspapers. But it was cozy, private, and mine. The landlord largely ignored me. Just knocked once a week for rent and occasionally left a bag of goods on the doorstep without saying anything. I worked over 50 hours in the hub, occasionally picking up Saturday shifts when they needed bodies for critical shipments. I kept my head down, completed the task, and did not complain. After about 7 weeks, the management started assigning me to the inventory control station, which required less heavy lifting. He never articulated why. He simply did it. At night, I'd stroll to the library to work on community college applications. I'd missed certain deadlines, but spring enrollment remained available. I composed articles on my phone, stored them to a free cloud account, and had them printed at the library for 15 cents per page. Every application fee stung. $50 here, $60 there. But I did pay them. I didn't tell my parents, or anyone. By early December, I had established a rhythm at the hub. Started recognizing faces and learning names. It seemed odd, as if I were truly creating something genuine. My phone still rang sometimes with unknown numbers, primarily voicemails that I discarded without listening to. I assumed they had moved on by now. I converted my room into a home gym, office, or storage closet. Then one day in early December, I received an email from my high school counselor. "Ethan, I hope this finds you safe. I wanted to let you know that your transcript request has been canceled. Your parents informed the school administration that you would not be pursuing higher education." I read it 5 times. They requested that we cease all correspondence regarding college applications, and I wanted to make sure you were aware. Please contact me if you require assistance. Then I phoned her back. She verified everything. My parents contacted the school 4 weeks ago, claiming I had decided against attending college and requesting that my records be designated inactive. Several deadlines had already gone. A state award that I had applied for was no longer available. I spent the next 4 days repairing it, phoning the school to explain the problem, and reactivating my records. The counselor assisted where she could, writing letters and making phone calls, but some possibilities had already passed. That night I sat in the shed, gazing at the wall, and I realized it. They weren't quite finished with me. They were aggressively attempting to sabotage my future before I could prove them incorrect. That was when I stopped feeling sad and began preparing. Winter struck heavily. The shed had minimal insulation, and the space heater only worked if it was exactly positioned. Most nights, I wore 3 layers to bed, piled up my socks, and snuggled up tightly. Work increased throughout the holidays. Most weeks I'd do doubles with my back screaming and my hands ripped up. However, each extra shift cost an additional $80 in tuition. The manager began rotating me into logistics coordinating. Less lifting means more problem solving. It turned out I was good at it. One night, the inventory system failed just before a key deadline. The whole team panicked. When I observed the problem message, the manager was on the phone and ranting at headquarters. In between job applications, I was training myself Excel and basic database skills at the library. This mistake was straightforward. A corrupted data table. I walked over. Try reloading yesterday's backup. Current database is corrupted. The manager looked at me. "You know how to do that?" I shrugged. "I can try." After 15 minutes, the system was operational. He slapped my back hard enough to leave a mark. "You just saved us a $30,000 penalty, kid." Word spread quickly. Within 2 weeks, individuals began flocking to me when their technology failed. I didn't get a raise. But people remembered my name. I started seeing myself as more than just a youngster stacking boxes. By late December, I had saved enough for spring tuition. I applied to 3 community college programs. I had to seek a dependency override from financial aid. I brought them shelter papers, a counselor's note, proof that I was self-supporting, 6 trips, and a pile of paperwork. Later, I finished it. In January, acceptance letters for all 3 programs arrived, along with a small need-based grant. I looked at the email for 2 hours, staring at the word congrats, as if it might vanish. That night, I made myself a boxed cake in the landlord's kitchen. Chocolate, crooked and somewhat burnt. I wrote my own name, Ethan, in blue icing. Ate 3 pieces. I saved the remainder. The next morning, I registered for classes. Introduction to Business Management, Collegiate Mathematics, English Composition, and Logistics Fundamentals. I did not inform my parents, but tiny communities speak. And 4 weeks later, I saw a neighbor at the grocery store. She grinned widely. "Ethan, heard you're going to college. Your mom must be so proud." I waved a hand. Yeah, must be, but I knew better. Later that week, my mother called from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. She didn't weep or shout. She just said, in her calculated, phony, sweet voice, "We heard about school, Ethan. That's wonderful. I hope you remember where you came from." As if I owed them anything. Deleted. Classes began. Mornings were spent working, afternoons were spent lecturing, and nights were spent in the library. We found an apartment near university with 2 peaceful housemates who paid their rent on time. Left the shed with a handshake, a thank you, and an extra $60 for the landlord. My business professor noted that I learned things up quickly. Started assigning me extra work, assisting other students, creating class schedules, making the dean's list in the spring semester, and landing a campus administration position in the autumn that paid higher than the warehouse. The first year was hard yet steady. Second year I settled in. Better apartment, better routine, and higher grades. I completed my 2-year associate degree and then proceeded to the state institution to pursue my bachelor's degree. By the time I was in my 3rd year of college, working on my bachelor's degree, I had been away from home for about 3 years. It felt like a lifetime. Then, one night in mid-September, a LinkedIn message arrived from a former neighbor. "Hey Ethan, wasn't sure if I should mention this, but thought you had a right to know. Your parents just listed the house for sale. Sign went up yesterday. Hope you're doing well." I glanced at the note. The home was for sale. At first nothing. It's just blank. Then something different. Something chilly and concentrated. I opened Zillow. The listing was easily found. Professional photographs, arranged furnishings, and generic descriptions. A charming family house with character. 3 bedrooms plus an extra room. Hardwood flooring. Quiet neighborhood. It has been lovingly maintained for over 20 years. I browsed through the pictures. Living area, kitchen, master bedroom, guest bathroom, and something called Jake's office bonus room. My room, but it wasn't mine anymore. Beige walls, bland bedding, generic landscape prints. No evidence of the 18 years I spent there. There are no posters, desks, or books. They didn't just eliminate me. They completely refurbished me. I sat there for quite a while, phone in hand, gazing at the listing. The asking price was quite expensive for a property of that age in that area. They were obviously desperate, probably needed to sell quickly. I dug deeper. Public property records are surprisingly easy to locate if you know where to search. I looked over the mortgage history, tax documents, and historical transactions and discovered something unusual. The mortgage was not paid off. Not even close. And they had fallen behind. According to public lien records, they have 4 to 5 months. That's when the concept started to shape. I wanted to visit the house one final time before it went to someone else. So I did something very crazy. I waited until the open house. They had one planned for that Sunday. According to the listing, when I arrived, the agent was welcoming visitors in the driveway. To appear legitimate, I stole my roommate's dress shirt and packed a folder filled with miscellaneous documents. The agent had no idea she was leading a tour for a ghost. "So the sellers are super motivated," she continued, anxiously clicking her pen as we came up the driveway. "They've already moved most of their personal belongings. I am looking for a swift closure. Their youngest has just begun college out of state. Of course, Jake is their youngest." I nodded and followed her inside. She chatted non-stop about crown molding, new appliances, and energy-efficient windows. I barely heard. My thoughts were focused on the gaps, the walls, and the fact that I wasn't there anymore. The kitchen looked the same. The same goes for the living room. My father's bedroom was staged using rental furnishings. Then we went to my old room. I stood at the doorway and felt nothing but cold. The agent pointed about as if she were displaying a treasure. This was their son's gaming and study area. It receives great natural light. An ideal adaptable space. Game and study room. That is what I would become. Jake's overflow. I stepped inside. They'd set it up like a college prep station. A stylish desk with a light. A bulletin board with neatly posted dorm checklists. College brochures spread over a side table. Jake's name is on everything. Next, we went through Jake's real room. Still decorated. Still had his belongings. Trophies lined the shelf. Posters adorned the walls. They had not touched a single item. The backyard was worse. The treehouse I had constructed with my uncle when I was 13, where I had spent hundreds of hours reading and fleeing, had been taken down. Just a rectangle of earth with few rusted bolts protruding from rotten timbers. The agent saw me gazing. The sellers said that they had dismantled an old building back here. There is a liability problem. I nodded. Did not say anything. She waited a minute, possibly feeling something strange in my quiet. Want to see the garage before we wrap up? She said pleasantly. I followed her via the side entrance. The garage was chaotic, with moving boxes and plastic bins heaped against the back wall. Most were labeled in my mother's immaculate handwriting. Holiday decorations. Kitchen overflow. Jake. Please keep. Then I noticed the corner. 3 containers were pushed beneath a broken treadmill. Masking tape labels in the same handwriting. Donate old room clutter. And the final one is the tiniest, almost like an afterthought. Trash. And guess whose garbage this was? Mine, of course. I gazed at the trash can for a long time. The agent did not notice. She was already headed back inside, discussing square feet. I moved to the back fence, hands in my pockets and breathing steadily. This was the yard where I learned to ride my bike and buried a time capsule in 4th grade, which is probably still under the oak tree. Where I had been for 18 years, it was now simply another listing, another transaction. That night, sitting in my car after the event, I made a decision. If they want to delete me, that's great, but I was going to make sure the entire world knew who I was, and they were going to watch from the ruins. I didn't want the screamed-for retaliation. I want vengeance that burned slowly. The sort that sneaks up, destroys silently, and leaves no trace. The text arrived unexpectedly around 2 months after I began attending community college. Jake. This was the first time I had heard from him since I left. I heard you're working at a grocery store and attending community college. LeMayo. Then another message. You know what I did to your room, right? Check this out. A photo was included. My former room, but it wasn't mine anymore. Freshly painted, new furnishings, and arranged like a showroom for the open house. Clean and pristine, like if I had never lived. I took out all of your rubbish. Looks much better now. I suppose that's what occurs when the dead weight disappears. Continue to be broke while doing your part-time job. Do not come back. Oh, and thank you for moving out. We really needed the area for anything worthwhile. I gazed at the message for a whole minute. Nor wounded, nor furious. Simply cold and calculating. He wanted a reaction. They wanted me to respond with something desperate or defensive. I wanted confirmation that he still had influence over me. I didn't respond. That night I was unable to sleep. I kept thinking about that photo, and how easy it was for them to remove me. Around 2 a.m., I opened Instagram and started browsing, passing time. That's when I discovered it. Jake's Fin is public. Same face, but different username. Some variations of his name using random numbers. The type of account individuals create when they believe they are being smart but are actually being careless. His narrative was still posted. Posted 6 hours ago. The first slide showed him seated in my former room. Caption: finally got rid of the dead weight. The second slide showed him recording himself in the mirror. Caption: Golden Child keeps winning. I took screenshots of both. The username is displayed, as is the timestamp. Then I continued browsing through his highlights. Months worth of posts, and that's when I struck gold. One highlight titled Real Talk had slides from a few months ago. Jake jokes with his pals about replicating someone else's calculus exam. Another slide boasts of having his girlfriend compose his English essays. Another one laughing about fabricating volunteer hours on his college application. Screenshots from group discussions when he admits to plagiarizing work. There's nothing concealed. Nothing private. Just out there in public, idiot. I take screenshots of every single one. I ensured that the username and timestamps were displayed in all shots. Then I sent them to myself. I opened my laptop. I created a new folder inside the one titled House. I called them Receipts. That's when I decided I wasn't simply going to survive anymore. I'm no longer just constructing my own life and hope that karma would someday catch up. I was going to be karma. The first step was getting information. Real information is buried in paperwork and public records. I kept it ordered as if I were developing a case, which I was. On my laptop I had a folder named Home, and inside it was another folder called Don't Lie to Me. PDFs, screenshots, highlighted dates, county links, bookmarked pages, and a running notes file where I recorded who said what and when. I also printed the worst crap. Staples paper, inexpensive binder and plastic sleeves. Something about having it in your hands makes it real. I spent the following 2 weeks looking into everything concerning their property sale. Public records were sufficient. Permits, liens, outdated MLS notes, HOA minutes, and court documents. I screenshotted everything and maintained a running log as if it were a case. Something fascinating happened. The basement has flooded 3 times during the last 7 years. Sump pump failures, water damage, and foundation fissures have all been documented and are being handled discreetly and cheaply with minimum repairs. Nothing that would stand out in a cursory walkthrough, but enough to be a severe issue for any buyer who looked. Guess what isn't disclosed in the current seller disclosure? Flooding, foundation difficulties, all of it. They were hiding it, not just leaving things out, but intentionally concealing systemic issues. That is fraud, namely real estate fraud. Could nullify the deal, expose them to litigation, and undermine their credibility. I saved every document, printed copies, and uploaded backups to 3 separate cloud accounts. But proof alone wasn't sufficient. I needed timing and plan. I contacted someone I hadn't spoken to in years, an old high school acquaintance. We went to high school together and ran track on the same team. He'd gotten into data analytics and was now working freelance conducting background research for small law firms. We weren't particularly close, but I had helped him once when his car broke down junior year, and he needed a ride to a college interview. We met in a coffee shop near school. I described what I required. Not everything. Just enough. I need to know what's buried in the public records, I informed them. Property history, permits, insurance claims. Things a typical buyer would not look for. He cracked his knuckles and grinned. Give me 3 days. He delivered in 48 hours. My pal did not hack anything. He just understood how to get permits, old postings and insurance breadcrumbs that most people never look at. County building permits revealed 3 distinct waterproofing operations over a 6-year period. He discovered contractor bills my father had filed to the HOA for compensation on shared drainage concerns. The HOA meeting minutes are public record in our county. Old MLS notes from when they initially purchased the property revealed little basement wetness. There were also small claims court papers from a prior owner who sued for water damage before my parents purchased it. The basement problem was greater than I anticipated. Not simply floods, but severe foundation breaches with water pouring through the walls during heavy rains. The sump pump was a temporary solution. The true remedy would cost at least $40,000. My parents were aware. My acquaintance discovered an 8-month-old construction permit application in which my father claimed basement waterproofing repair and temporary patching as the work description. They had done the bare minimum and never revealed any of it. I had them, but I was still not ready to relocate. I wanted the timing to be exact and surgical. Meanwhile, I continued to develop my life. The institution invited me to speak at the autumn first-generation student showcase. They wanted upperclassmen who had surmounted hurdles to share their experiences. Someone who persevered despite the lack of familial support. The event was set for late October for the whole university, including staff, students, and parents. That's when I knew the time was ideal. What if my parents watched me on stage, acknowledged as a success, and publicly applauded, just as their house sale fell through? What if all they'd created, their image, their idyllic family myth, crumbled because I succeeded without them? I didn't yell, but rather grinned. I began placing parts in place. I had the paperwork, the evidence of fraud, ready to go at the appropriate time. I contacted the college communications department and they verified that my story will be included. Full profile, photographs, and the works. I agreed to everything. And then I got one more card. Jake shared screenshots from his Fanina. All those postings bragging about cheating, faking volunteer hours, and plagiarizing essays were sitting in my receipts folder, waiting. Nothing big, but packed together and forwarded to the appropriate admissions office. That is different. I did not want to destroy him. Just remind him that no one is untouchable forever. I waited until October, and then I started. The orientation address was delivered on a Thursday afternoon. I'd practiced it a dozen times alone in my flat, hoping to sound confident without seeming rehearsed. The college wanted inspirational, so I provided them honest answers. I talked about growing up invisible, working 2 jobs to cover application costs, sleeping in a church shelter and learning to stretch $3 into 2 meals, and the moment I understood I didn't need anyone's permission to be alive. I made the dean's list 4 semesters in a row while working part-time and attending school. The auditorium was filled. 300 individuals, possibly more. Students, parents, professors, and my parents, who are most likely watching online. The complete video was released on the college's website that night. 3 hours later, it had been shared 40 times. By the morning, 100 old classmates had commented, and professors had sought out. Strangers received notes claiming they had been through something similar, and my tale offered them hope, which my parents noticed. I know because someone gave me a screenshot of a comment my mother made on a shared post. This is full of exaggerations. Some people just don't appreciate everything their families sacrifice. Passive-aggressive, defensive, and perfect. She was rattled, and I hadn't finished. What amused me was how quickly things got beyond my control. The local community page took it up since tiny communities view other people's lives as free entertainment. Someone uploaded the story. Someone else uploaded a screenshot of my mother's reply. And then the responses devolved into a gossip fest that pretended to be concerned but was actually simply drama. The next day, the listing agent abruptly disabled her listing comments. Not a coincidence, simply damage control. While the profile was being circulated online, I completed Phase 2. The property purchasers were in the process of finalizing their inspections. Everything was coming to a close. They'd already gotten finance, begun packing, and psychologically invested in this as their new home. That's when I shipped the box. Anonymous, untraceable, and forwarded using a third-party mail provider. Inside was a flash drive, permit history showing recurrent waterproofing work, images of the open house listing showing suspicious wall stains, screenshots of the HOA meeting minutes noting shared drainage concerns, copies of the previous MLS comments suggesting moisture, and the claim includes court records from the prior owner's case, as well as a prepared letter. This property has concealed structural damage. The vendors were aware of the situation and actively disguised it. If you close on this residence, you assume the obligation. Inquire with the agent about any waterproofing permits or foundation concerns that have been reported in county records. See what they say. 4 days later, the listing disappeared. The purchasers backed out strongly. Here's the trouble about real estate. When a buyer's inspection confirms water infiltration and foundation damage and the buyer's agent requests repairs or credits in writing, the agent is legally required to report going forward. The listing agent couldn't hide it any longer. The buyer's agent issued her a formal email urging that the sellers remedy secret structural concerns or they would walk. That email may not be public record, but it made the rounds. Real estate agents chat. Small-town agents, particularly potential buyers, would learn about it. Any credible buyer's agent would pose inquiries, and if the agent tries to hide it now, she will lose her license. They were overdue on their mortgage, unable to sell without declaring and correcting. They didn't have $40,000. Looking at foreclosure, I didn't celebrate. Instead, I watched the dominoes fall. Then came step 3. Jake was applying to colleges, huge schools, and prominent programs based on faked grades and fabricated accomplishments. I submitted an anonymous email to the admissions integrity office for his top 3 picks. Concerns have been raised about academic dishonesty in applicant Jake. Attached are screenshots of false volunteer records and admitting plagiarism. Please review before making final acceptance choices. I've provided the screenshots. Jake is joking about duplicating assignments, boasting about faking community service hours, and laughing about having buddies sign attendance sheets he never earned. I didn't want him rejected right away. I only wanted a subtle under-review stamp that would follow him around. 2 weeks later, I learned through the small-town network that Jake's top-choice acceptance was delayed. They had demanded further paperwork. His scholarship committee placed his application on hold seeking explanation. Nothing definite. Nothing explosive, only questions. But Jake would meet someone new. He'd wait months for the other shoe to drop, incessantly checking his inbox and wondering who was watching. That was sufficient. 3 weeks have passed, and things are quiet and usual. I went to class, worked my shift, and studied at the library. It was already November, a little more than 2 years after I left their house. I'd turned 22 months earlier. They had missed 2 birthdays. Then they showed up. When I returned home from work on Tuesday night, they were waiting outside my apartment building. Both of them. My father appeared older and exhausted, with his shoulders dropped. My mother had that phony calm smile she gives when she's barely keeping it together. "Ethan," my father began, his voice strained. "We need to talk." I paused on the pavement, didn't approach closer, and simply gazed at them. "Now," I spoke gently, "after the home is unsellable and Jake's applications fall through. That when you want to talk?" My father reacted as if I had hit him. "We didn't realize things had gotten this bad." "You didn't know or didn't care?" "Please," my mother murmured, coming closer. "We've made mistakes. We see that now. But this needs to stop. You're hurting your family." I was chuckling coldly. My family. Where was my family when you forgot my birthday? Where was my family when you sabotaged my college applications? Where was my family when Dad beat me and called me a mistake? There is silence. My father gazed at the ground. My mother's eyes welled up with the artificial tears she is so excellent at generating. "We're losing everything," she stated gently. "The house is going into foreclosure. Jake lost his scholarship offers. We had to take out loans just to cover his tuition. We're barely surviving." "Good," I said, without hesitation. "You should know what that feels like," my father continued, his voice cracking slightly. "We're sorry. Okay, we're sorry. We were wrong. But you have to understand, we were under a lot of stress. We made mistakes." "Mistakes?" I cut him off. "You didn't make mistakes. You made choices. Every single day for 18 years you chose Jake over me. You chose to make me feel small, worthless, like I didn't matter. And now you're here because you need something from me. Not because you miss me. Not because you regret what you did. Because you need help." My mom tried again. "We thought maybe you could help us just temporarily. We know you're doing well with your job and school, and if you could just..." What I said. "Loan you money, co-sign something, bail you out?" Let me guess. "You heard I got a promotion at work. I thought I'd be an easy mark." They didn't dispute it. "We're your parents," my father replied frantically. "Doesn't that mean anything? You stopped being my parents the day you had that watch party for Jake and forgot I existed." I responded. "You stopped being my parents when you beat me and branded me a failure. You ceased being my parents when you attempted to damage my future. So no, it means nothing." My mother tried one more time. "Ethan, please, we're begging you. We'll lose everything." I took out my phone, opened my photographs and showed them the image from orientation. I'm on stage, clutching my prize and beaming. "This," he said, "is what I built without you. This is what I became after you threw me away. And you know what? I'm better for it. So whatever you're about to lose, that's called consequences. Welcome to the club." I strolled past them towards my building. My father grabbed my arm. Not difficult, just desperate. "Don't," I replied gently, moving away. "Don't ever touch me again." He let go. I glanced at both of them one more time. "You wanted me gone. You got your wish. Now stay gone." I stepped inside, closed the door, and that was the last time I saw them in person. Over the next year, bits and pieces of their tale emerged. The home fell into foreclosure. They went to a little apartment across town. To make finances meet, my father started working weekends delivering parcels. Jake transferred to a public school without a scholarship and worked part-time at a call center to assist with expenses. They made several attempts to contact us. Birthday texts and holiday greetings are both brief and superficial. Never a genuine apology. There were only feeble attempts at reconnection that failed to recognize their actions. I never replied. At 22 years old, I graduated with honors. I got promoted twice at my university job. My actual family are the ones I selected, and they never forced me to beg for a seat at the table.